I drove through a haunted forest at night. What followed me will haunt you forever. I never should have opened that door. There was a chill in the air, the kind that crawls under your skin and settles in your bones. I was just trying to take a shortcut, thinking I'd save time. Surely, driving through a forest couldn't be that big of a deal, right? But as soon as I turned off the main road, something felt off. Darkness enveloped me. It was thick, suffocating. My headlights fought valiantly against it but revealed more shadows than substance. The trees loomed like twisted sentinels, their branches clawing at the sky. The road was narrow, barely a lane wide, and I could swear I heard whispers, soft, insistent voices barely audible over the hum of my engine. Each murmur sent shivers down my spine. The tires crunched on gravel, echoing in the eerie silence. I tried to shake off the unease gnawing at me. A deer? Maybe a raccoon. But those whispers, they were different. They were pleading. I could almost make out words, leave, turn back, but I pushed forward, my gut coiling tighter with each passing moment. Then, a flash. A figure darted through the trees. My heart raced. What was that? I leaned closer to the steering wheel, my breath hitching. The world outside felt alive, pulsing. The branches whispered black secrets, and the air grew dense, as if reality itself was holding its breath. I flicked on the high beams, illuminating the forest around me. Nothing. Just shadows dancing in the periphery that I thought I saw eyes watching from the dark, glimmers of light that vanished as quickly as they appeared. My fingers tightened around the steering wheel. The car's engine sputtered, a soft whine that felt like a warning. Panic bubbled in my throat. Come on, come on. I urged, but the car lurched forward, slowing as if the very forest was pulling me in. Suddenly, my rearview mirror reflected something dark behind me. A shape, I couldn't see it clearly, but it felt wrong. An oppressive weight settled in the pit of my stomach. My breath quickened. The further I went, the more that shape seemed to follow. It felt like my shadow was no longer mine. Then came the noises, branches cracking, the soft padding of footsteps just beyond the tree line. I shot a glance over my shoulder. Nothing but the swirling darkness. Just my imagination, I muttered, but I could feel the tension prickling at the base of my neck. I needed to get out. With sweat sliding down my back, I pressed the accelerator harder. The forest whirled past me, a blur of twisted shapes and dark hues. I knew I had to escape, but something inside me screamed to stop. The whispers crescendoed, a haunting chorus echoing through the night. Stay, they beckoned. And then, right in front of me, the road vanished. A thick wall of fog engulfed everything. The headlights cut through it, but not enough to reveal what lay ahead. I slammed on the brakes. My heart thundered. What was happening? As the mist rolled like fingers across the ground, the figure emerged. My breath caught in my throat. It was there, standing still, shrouded in shadows. I couldn't see its face, but I felt those eyes boring into me, cold and unyielding. A scream built in my throat, but before I could let it out, the engine died. Silence fell like a heavy blanket. The weight of that figure pressed down on me. What was I going to do? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon, and while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The fog thickened, swirled, and writhed like a living thing. My breath came in ragged gasps as I tried to convince myself this was just an illusion, the product of fatigue or an overactive imagination. But deep down, I knew better. The figure remained in front of me, a dark silhouette against the swirling white. Please just leave me alone, I whispered, but the words fell flat in the heavy air. There was only silence in reply, an oppressive void that felt alive. The headlights weakly illuminated patches of the forest, revealing twisted branches that seemed to reach for me, desperate to pull me into their dark embrace. That's when I heard me name, spoken soft and slow, a chilling echo that bounced off the trees. Liam. The voice was sultry yet sinister, like sweet poison on the tongue. My pulse quickened, a visceral response to the way it slithered through the fog. Liam, come closer. Against my better judgment, I unbuckled my seatbelt. It was as if an unseen force was tugging at my very essence, compelling me to step out. Don't, I pleaded with myself, but my body disobeyed, moving towards that whispering void. With each step, the ground squelched beneath my sneakers, the earth thick with dampness. The smell of decay permeated the air, a sickly sweet rot that turned my stomach. The figure stood unwavering, waiting, as the fog curled around its legs like a lover's caress. Who are you? My voice trembled, a fragile thread in the cloying atmosphere. What do you want from me? Remember, the word lingered in the air, a taunt that beckoned me closer. My heart hammered in my chest. The identity of the figure dissolved in the fog, blurring into something incomprehensible. Yet I felt its gaze locking onto mine, and dread coiled around me like a serpent. The whispers morphed into frantic voices, desperate and demanding. Help us. Save us. They swirled around me, echoing from the depths of the trees. Shadows darted in the periphery, dark shapes twisting and writhing beneath the veil, just beyond my reach. I turned back to the car, a fleeting notion of escape flickering in my mind, but the engine lay silent, a dead weight in the night. I was alone now, adrift in this unholy place where the boundaries of reality had dissolved. I spun back towards the figure, desperate for answers. What happened here? I shouted, my voice cracking under the weight of my fear. Tell me. Suddenly, the fog parted to reveal a scene that twisted my stomach into knots. The ground was littered with bones, broken remnants of lives once lived. The figure extended an arm, beckoning me to look closer. I saw the tattered remnants of clothes, torn faces eternally trapped in silent screams. Panic flared, and I stumbled backward, casting furtive glances at the surrounding woods, feeling eyes that had no owner prying into my soul. You're one of them, aren't you? I gasped. And then, like an avalanche unbound, the whispers intensified, echoing off the trees with a fury that rattled my very being. Join us. Join us. They shrieked, and the forest thrummed with palpable energy, as if the shadows themselves thirsted for my presence. Every instinct screamed for me to run, to disregard the dull tug of fascination pulling me deeper. But then something else erupted in the periphery. A blinding light surged from behind me, cutting through the fog like a sword. My heart leapt, thinking salvation had arrived. I turned around, eyes widening, but the light came not from any headlight or warmth of a familiar car. It surged like a portal, brilliant and ghastly, illuminating the trees in an ethereal glow. And standing at its heart was a figure, not the one from the forest, but something else entirely. It was twisted, deformed, and it wore the horror of countless souls trapped and screaming in a face that no longer resembled humanity. Behind me, the whispers turned into anguished cries. We cannot let you go. The feeling of despair crashed over me like a wave. And then, as the light flickered and dimmed, I felt the tree branches snapping like fingers against my back. Just before the shadows enveloped me, the last thing I saw was a pair of eyes gleaming in the darkness, hungry and expectant. The forest erupted with chaos, and with a final scream trapped in my throat, darkness swallowed me whole. I awoke gasping, the cold bite of the earth beneath me yanking me from the clutches of that suffocating void. For a fleeting moment, I thought I might be back in the safety of my car, but as my eyes adjusted to the dim light, the twisted trunks of ancient trees loomed ominously around me. The very air dripped with a heavy tang of loamy soil and despair that I tried to scramble to my feet, but the ground was slick with a murky substance that sent me crashing back down. Panic coursed through my veins as I shoved my hands against the soggy earth, each frantic effort compounded by the surfacing memories of bone and decay. Freezing night air nipped at my skin, reminding me I was utterly vulnerable in this desolate place, light years away from safety. Liam, the voice, soft and mocking, echoed through the darkness, sending chills racing down my spine. This time it was colder, weaving between the trees, filling every crevice of my mind with terror. Liam, you didn't need to be alone. That I squeezed my eyes shut, pressing my palms against my ears as if to block out the haunting echoes. But they only grew louder, galloping closer, a cacophony of lost souls wrapped in nightmarish glee. Liam, will you heed our call? Desperate, I forced myself to my feet again, adrenaline propelling my thoughts toward escape. The cacophony ebbed momentarily, as if assessing my resolve, before surging forward, filling the air with sinister laughter. Within the shadows, unseen entities writhed, longing for something, or someone, to join them in their purgatory. As I staggered deeper into the forest, my heart thudded like a drum in my chest. Tattered remnants of clothing swirled at my ankles, remnants of those I'd seen before. Those eyes, those hungry eyes, I could almost feel their pull, reminding me that I was already tethered to their fate. Suddenly, I stumbled upon a clearing. The air was charged, thick with an electric sense of foreboding. Fireflies danced around me, glowing brightly against the night, momentarily tricking my mind into believing not all in this cursed realm was lost. But as I stood there, hope warring with the nauseating dread, I caught sight of a blackened stump at the center of the clearing. A terrible, rasping sound filled the space, a chilling mix of whispers and laughter. As if in response, shadows converged upon the stump, swirling and morphing like dark ink on paper. With heart racing, I approached cautiously, dread creeping up my spine. Swirling shadows began to take form, revealing twisted faces, anger and sorrow mingling in their expressions. You should not have come, Liam. You could have turned back. Their voices mingled, weaving a web of lamentation that ensnared my senses. We are bound here, and now, so are you. I stood frozen, the realization crashing over me like a tidal wave. They were right. I had felt an overwhelming urge to come deeper into this realm of misery, to become part of their never-ending story. Whatever it was that drove me out here was mirroring the darkness within my very soul. No. I shouted into the void, refusing to accept their claim. Am not one of you, but the shadows moved closer, circling me with malevolent glee. Yes, you are, they taunted. We all harbor a darkness we wish to deny. You've come to feed it, to feed us. Panicked gasps tore from my lips as they closed the distance, and just as I turned to flee, a dense fog erupted from the ground, enveloping me in a suffocating chill. I gasped for breath, my vision blurring into paranoia, and I stumbled back toward the edge of the clearing. Join us. Echoed through the air, a wild frenzy that stole the ground from beneath me. My heart raced as I felt the ground tremble like a living thing, trembling in sympathy with their cries. And then, through the dimness, the light surged again, brilliant and stark. It flickered in and out, revealing a figure standing in defiance of the encroaching shadows. As I approached the beacon of luminescence, I recognized the terrible form from before, its grotesque features twisted even more in the pulsing light, beckoning me with twisted fingers, and then, at that very moment, a flash ripped through the darkness, revealing a landscape, features twisted and contorted in agony that mirrored the souls trapped within. This was their prison, thrumming with despair. As I reached out toward the light, the ground erupted beneath me, roots wrapping around my legs like tendrils of darkness. The last thing I saw was the light blinking, fading, flickering like the heart of a dying star before a whispered alliance broke through the chaos. Liam, it's too late. The world turned to black, and the laughter surged again, louder than my terror, echoing into an endless night. The air felt stale and ancient, thick like the fog that clung to my skin. I opened my eyes to find myself back on the ground, but it was a different landscape, a grotesque rendition of the clearing, where the shadows had morphed into something more tangible. I barely registered the pulse of my own heart, my focus was drawn to the oppressive atmosphere surrounding me, stifling my breath. Horrified, I pushed myself up again, only to find that I was not alone. The previously swirling shadows had transformed into dark figures with hollow eyes that bore into my very essence. They loomed over me, their faces shifting, sometimes anguished, sometimes twisted in grotesque glee, but always the same, a reflection of my own desperation. "Welcome back," one whispered, its voice a ragged knife that cut through my soul. "We've been waiting." That I staggered back, the wet earth sucking at my shoes as I struggled to stand. The realization clawed at my heart, I was not merely trapped here. I had been summoned. I felt something shift deep within me, as if they were drawing out the very shadows I sought to escape. My breath quickened, the pull to them was growing stronger, like a whirlpool dragging me to depths I didn't fully understand. "Let me go," I cried, my voice trembling in defiance, but doubt wormed its way into my mind as I felt the edges of my sanity fray under their collective gaze. "Don't you see, Liam?" One figure rasped out, its face morphed into a mockery of my own. "You are part of this dark symphony. You've always been. All you need to do is surrender." A murmur of agreement rose among them. I could see the flickering lights of their eyes shift in rhythm, feeding off the very despair that enveloped me. Panic exploded in my chest, and the air thickened like molasses. I turned to flee once more but found myself rooted in place. The ground beneath me pulsed like a living thing, and I felt the gaunt fingers of the dead rise from the soil, icy tendrils that ensnared my legs. No. I screamed, clenching my fists as I fought against their grip. But dread coursed through me, draining my resolve. I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes. I was losing myself in this murky morass of anguish and longing. "Join us," they crooned in eerie chorus, their voices weaving through my thoughts. "Feel the ecstasy of letting go. You can be one of us." I closed my eyes against the encroaching shadows, forcing myself to summon a flicker of willpower, of courage. I recalled the light, the beacon that had set me upon this dark road. If I could find it again, perhaps I could escape this ghastly fate. The notion fueled a brief spark of defiance, and with every ounce of strength, I tore free from their grasp. I sprinted blindly through the twisted trees, feeling the dark figure's angry howls echo behind me. The shadows leapt at my heels, whispering secrets of despair that clawed at the edges of my sanity. "You can't run from truth. You can't outrun yourself," they shrieked, their voices melding into a shrill symphony, a haunting refrain that enveloped me, but I wouldn't give in. I pushed ahead, adrenaline saturating my senses as I raced toward the glow that pulsed like the heartbeat of a frail survivor. The clearing, the stump with the vile face, it came back into focus, dancing like a disease I knew too well. The light flickered again, off in the distance, carrying with it promises of salvation that felt somehow tainted. As I stumbled towards it, panic surged anew. What if it wasn't freedom? What if it was a deeper trap? I misstepped, and the ground gave way once more, swallowing me whole into a hideous pit where reality and nightmares intertwined. Desperation clawed at my throat as I fell, arms flailing. I landed sprawled on damp earth, inhaling the stench of decay. I pushed myself up, trembling, but there was no time to breathe. Before me stood a mirror, its surface swirling like smoke, reflecting fragments of my life, echoes of my past mingling with their mocking laughter. I raised a hand to the glassy surface, and suddenly the mirror shattered, splintering into 100 shards that sparkled ominously. Each shard shifted to depict a memory that lay buried, the voices, the deceit, the latent darkness that shadowed my life, urging me to take action, to step back into the darkness. From behind me, I felt them closing in again, a hungry whisper creeping into my ear. "You cannot escape this reflection, Liam. You are one of us." With horror ripping through my gut, I turned to face them, the shards cutting deeper into my soul. Each reflection held a twisted version of myself, a glimpse of what I feared, a life shattered by despair, and just as the figure closest to me grinned maliciously, merging with my very essence, the ground trembled and cracked beneath me once more. I was falling again, deeper into a world of overwhelming darkness, and I could feel the shadows wrapping around me like a suffocating shroud. "This is just the beginning," they whispered in unison, the chilling echo carrying me away from the light. And then, silence. Endless, consuming silence, wrapping around me as I sank deeper into the darkness. The darkness closed in like a shroud, the silence nearly palpable, echoing the pounding of my heart. I was adrift, lost in a void that felt lived in its very essence, heavy with secrets and the weight of souls long extinguished. With trembling movements, I pushed myself up, surrounded by dense shadows that twisted like serpents at my periphery, their shapes flaring and fading in the absence of light. Where am I? I whispered, my voice swallowed by the suffocating quiet. My throat ached, each breath a labor, as I scanned the muted landscape. An eerie glow pulsed in the far distance, a lighthouse in the storm of my psyche, promising something more than just an escape. I felt it beckoning me like a moth toward the flame that I took hesitant steps, feet sinking into the soft earth littered with the remnants of forgotten lives. There were whispers in the air now, low and guttural. They danced around me, wrapping my mind in their coiling tendrils, coaxing memories from a place deep within me. Mother's voice sang to me, soft and nurturing, contrasting sharply with the grotesque laughter that echoed from the void. Return to us, Liam, they beckoned, ethereal and insistent, growing louder until a cacophony reverberated around me. I clamped my hands over my ears, desperate to drown out their haunting cries, but the resonance burrowed deeper, flooding my thoughts with images I fought to cast aside. Faces of my past flashed in and out of focus, each tethered to the darkness I once believed I had escaped. Cries of fellow travelers rang out, phantoms trapped in their own torment, pleading for release. A heavy dread settled in my stomach. How many had come before me? What fates had they succumbed to? The weight of their sorrow pressed down on me, each whisper unearthing roots of guilt that twisted through my conscience. That I pressed forward, desperation igniting each step, determined to find that flicker of light. It glimmered like a distant star, pulsating, a heartbeat in the maddening dark. Just as I thought I could reach it, the ground shifted beneath me, and I stumbled into a clearing that spread like a vast canvas, a tableau of decay. Jarring visions erupted. I was caught in a maelstrom of swirling memories, a blizzard of terror and regret. Each fleeting moment depicted the faces of the friends I had lost, those who had vanished without a trace, swallowed by the same darkness that now beckoned me. Were they looking at me through the lens of that cursed mirror, begging me to join them, or perhaps warning me to flee? Muffled sounds erupted, a cacophony of wails merging with ethereal laughter as shadows morphed into twisted figures. Me lost friends, their features contorted, eyes hollowed into black voids. Remember us? One hissed, the voice a sickening parody of familiarity pushing against my resolve. Stop! I screamed, and suddenly the ephemeral landscape split apart, revealing a dizzying chasm that yawned before me, a cavern of despair, flanked by jagged stones slick with moisture. In that moment, the shadows rushed forth, grasping for me, pulling my very essence toward the depths of their realm. They encircled me with an effortlessness that made my heart thunder as I jerked backward, teetering on the edge of the abyss. Join us. Their voices sang, weaving a spell that resonated with the longing gnawing inside me. The abyss beckoned with the promise of serenity, of peace, everything that had eluded me. Just a step forward and I could erase my own existence, dissolve into the ether surrounding me, becoming one with those that lingered in the dark. Liam, no. A familiar shout broke through, a flash of a childhood memory of laughter and friendship, tethering me to something real, something that had once brought light into my life. As I fought against the pull, I focused on that voice. Who had it been? It rang with urgency, a last echo of humanity. Just then, as I wavered on the edge, a strong gust of wind surged from the abyss, bringing with it a host of screams that clamored for release, a tidal wave of remorse crashing into me. I was torn between worlds, the echo of my longing clawing at my soul as the darkness surged forward. What are you willing to sacrifice? They whispered as I lost my footing, spinning helplessly, grasping for anything to hold on to. And just when I thought the shadows would fully consume me, a sharp crack reverberated through the air. A flicker of light burst forth, blinding and scorching, splitting the darkness like a rift in reality. Was it salvation? Or a more insidious trap? I tried to shield my eyes, but the light surged, more potent than anything I had ever encountered. As I fell into its embrace, I felt a cold sensation envelop me, a hand closing around my throat, a hand that felt strikingly familiar. Help me. I gasped, choking against the pressure that tightened mercilessly, drawing me into a vortex of chaos. And just before consciousness slipped away, that voice whispered again, now distinct and lonely, "You're not going anywhere, Liam." The light flickered and then black. The taste of blood filled my mouth as I plunged into darkness, leaving me to contemplate what horrors awaited me in the abyss below. The silence of the void shifted, no longer a mere absence but a living creature, wrapping around me like a serpent tightening its coils in a predator's embrace. I blinked, searching for remnants of the light, desperately hoping that I hadn't left it behind. Instead, as I regained my bearings, shadows seemed to curl away from my body, as if even the darkness feared what I had become. Liam. The familiar voice repeated, invasive and unnerving. It flickered in and out of my consciousness like a dying star, neither comforting nor capable of guiding me. I tried to respond, but the words turned to ash in my throat. Instead, I pushed against the oppressive weight around me, struggling to decipher my surroundings. There were no walls here, only an expanse of something slick beneath me, cooler than the air pressing against my skin. As I let my fingers probe the surface, a chill ran through me, solid and unyielding. My heart sank further. It was flesh. The flesh of something vast, a grotesque amalgamation of bodies fused together, clamoring in silent woe. I recoiled, shivering as I caught a whiff of decay, a miasma that seemed to rise and twist around my head like a serpent's hiss. Welcome home, a sibilant hiss echoed, each word thick with malice. The shadows began to coalesce around me, pooling like ink spilled across a page. They danced and shifted to form distinct shapes. Twisted faces emerged from the darkness, none wearing features I recognized, yet they reflected a warped semblance of familiarity. A chorus of voices rang out, murmurs melding into a singular, echoing chant. Join us, Liam, they urged, and the shadows pointed toward a glowing curtain ahead, an iridescent veil that pulsed like a heartbeat. My breaths became frantic, each gasping intake a reminder of dread compressed in my chest. What lay beyond that veil? Was it another realm, or was it the very prison hoarding the souls of those I once knew? Despite the pleading within, I took a step back, the flesh beneath me quivering in response, almost as if it were sentient. You don't have to be afraid, the sinister voice murmured, now closer, wrapping around me like a shroud. We only want to help you remember. The abysmal hole grew wide within me, a yearning I fought to suppress but could no longer ignore. Memories clawed through the fog of my mind. Sir returned to the abandoned churchyard, the moon drenched in blood while we hid from the world. My friends, laughing in defiance of the union we were bound to break. I closed my eyes to block them out, but the sound of their joy turned to an unsettling echo, transforming into anguished shrieks. A vision flashed before my eyes, Charlie with his wild laughter and disarming grin, cradling a jack-o'-lantern with a wicked smirk. Then darkness swallowed him, cocooning him as he disappeared into nothing. Don't you see? The voice persisted. You let them go, Liam.no. I shouted desperately. Each breath became a war, and I opened my eyes, forcing myself to confront the swirling madness surrounding me. They're gone. All because of you. A shadow elongating into a grotesque figure with bloodied hands, arms stretched wide, pleading yet threatening. It wore the visage of Charlie, contorted with anguish, his eyes pleading for forgiveness lost to time. You brought them here, and now you're lost, too. The fingers brushed against my cheek, a cold caress laced with tears, cool and sorrowful. They need you to finish what you started. The desperation swamped over me. I stumbled back into the collective mass beneath me, the bodies quaking underfoot, uniting their familial sorrow in a deafening pulse. The relentless pounding matched the surge of pain gripping my throat, 1,000 whispers melodiously calling confessions laden with despair. Liam, embrace your fate. There is no escape. But I had to retaliate. I grabbed at the remnants of light fluttering from the veil ahead, straining against the tidal wave of despair that threatened to drag me under. With a primal roar, I charged forward, the moment my finger grazed the surface of the glowing curtain. Everything shattered. Light burst forth, illuminating the darkness and igniting an explosion of chaos swirling around me. Suddenly, a blinding flash engulfed me, and shadowy silhouettes erupted with cries as I was thrust backward, landing hard on the rotting ground. My vision blurred, but I glimpsed a swirling portal at the epicenter of the chaos, a whirlwind of faces, each locking eyes with me in an unending gaze of sorrowful accusation, and then silence fell as the portal pulsated and beckoned, lighting the entire cavern in an ominous glow. One by one, the shadowy figures twisted and began descending into its depths, vanishing into the light consumed. Their anguished expressions echoed around me, tugging at the fibers of my very being. Liam. Don't look back, it was the voice again, stronger, more immediate. But before I could respond, the shadows surged, dragging me toward the portal. I thrashed against their grip, but they swirled hungrily. Join us. I was pulled closer to the edge of the swirling abyss. The overwhelming sensation of being swallowed whole flooded my senses. The abyss yawned wide, its siren song triumphant and chanting my name. As I teetered on the brink, I caught one final glimpse of something, a word glittering in the maw of the light, a name of someone I once knew but had tried to forget. Their scream reverberated in my mind, louder than the cacophony around me. Charlie, no. I shrieked, the weight of the entirety of past sins crashing into me anew, but I felt the darkness begin to slip away. And then, all at once, a hand seized my shoulder, squeezing tight and pulling me back, but not alone. I was not merely losing myself, I was losing him. Don't leave me. But it was too late. The shadows surged, and with one violent, shattering moment, we were both lost to the tumult, spiraling into an uncertain fate, his presence fading faster than my own. A flash of light, a wicked grin, and all fell dark, escaping my grasp. I was left alone, feeling the sharp chill of realization debilitate my senses, leaving nothing but a hollow ache before the void claimed me, where every face beckoned, and every voice called out for revenge. No. I bellowed, an echo swallowed whole by the void, just as the portal exploded into darkness, an everlasting whisper trailing behind, you can never leave. The last thing I felt was the cold of countless eyes locked onto me, and then nothing. I woke in disarray, gasping as if surfacing from a frigid ocean, my skin slick with disbelief rather than water. Desperately, I blinked away the remnants of shadows. Light, bright and sharp, cut through the gloom but bore an unnatural edge, contorting reality around me. I was sprawled on the floor of a dilapidated cabin, the wood splintering beneath me. The air was thick with an unsettling stillness that hinted at something unholy lurking just beyond my vision. My heart raced as I pushed myself to sit, the shadows creeping at the edges of my existence filling the corners of the room. The remnants of the portal's pull still tingled in my veins, leaving me nauseous and trembling as I recalled the faces that had haunted me moments before. Charlie, I whispered, but the name scraped my throat raw. The cabin was no sanctuary, it was a prison woven from despair. Old photographs lined the walls, faded sepia-toned memories of long-forgotten lives, children with wide smiles, adults captured mid-laughter. Yet their eyes told a different story, one of loss, overshadowing the remnants of joy like a shroud. I rose unsteadily to my feet, feeling the rotting floor beneath me sag and groan in protest. Where am I? The question spiraled up into the oppressive silence, emanating an echo that seemed to mock me. As I stepped closer to the photographs, a chill coursed through the air, and I could swear I felt the gaze of those trapped within the frames painted on me, their stares heavy with longing and sorrow. Hastily, I turned away, sensing dread seep into the very walls, tightening around me. Sudden movement caught my eye, a flicker in the corner where the light barely reached, too dark to discern. Anxiety thrummed beneath my skin as the second stretched, filled only with my quickening heartbeat. Liam, a voice, soft yet familiar, whispered from the shadows, lingering like smoke. It rippled through me, sending electric chills down my spine as recognition flooded back. It was Charlie, but unmistakably distorted, tinged with desperation. Help me, I clutched my head, gritting my teeth against the rising tide of horror that engulfed me. I can't help you. I screamed, but the words twisted in the air and crumbled into silence. The shadows clustered more heavily, writhing along the edges of the room as if seeking an invitation. Suddenly, a thump reverberated from the far end of the cabin. I hesitated, drawn toward the sound against every instinct screaming for me to flee. As I stepped into the darkness, the air grew colder, the light from my own heartbeat dimming, replaced by an unsettling presence. There it was, again, a thud, unnaturally rhythmic. Moving cautiously, I approached a heavy door at the back, its surface marred by deep scratches, as if undertaking a desperate struggle against some unseen force. Fear washed over me in waves, yet I pressed my ear against the wood, listening intently. "Help me, Liam. Please, you must let me out." Charlie's voice resonated clearly, penetrating the fog of my mind. My heart raced at the anguish lacing every syllable. The door shuddered as if something behind it yearned for freedom. The doorknob was cold to the touch, and I hesitated, my hand trembling. I knew better. The darkness had a hook buried deep within me, and the promise of facing my past terrified me. But could I really leave him behind? With resolute desperation, I turned the knob. The door creaked open, revealing a long, dim corridor shrouded in an impenetrable gloom. Faint whispers drifted down the hallway, a cacophony of pleas echoing from within. A pit opened inside me, a grotesque yearning battling the dread that threatened to consume me. "Please." Charlie's voice came again, intertwined with ghostly laughter that sent shivers racing down my spine. I stepped forward, compelled, until I found myself engulfed in the corridor's suffocating clasp, the air heavier with despair, curling around me like smoke. Moments dragged into eternity as I stumbled further into the abyss, the whispers now surrounding me, swirling and coiling, an insidious storm promising forgotten truths in exchange for my soul. My breaths quickened as I turned, searching for clarity in the oppressive dark, but the shadows only laughed. They echoed Charlie's cries, turning my heart into stone. "Please, Liam. I'm scared." The frail plea wrenched through the laughter, but it was accompanied by another voice, violent and jovial. "Oh, you've brought so many to play, Liam. They're all here because of you." The shadows thickened, swirling to form silhouettes, me friends, distorted and grotesque, their forms stretched beyond human limits, faces frozen in terror. I recognized them all: Charlie, Sarah, Ben. They reached for me, mouths moving in a silent chorus, eyes wide with accusation, reflecting my deepest fears. "No. Not you." I stumbled backward, heart racing, pulse pounding as I faced the twisted embodiment of my past. "Join us, Liam," they beckoned, faces shifting into a macabre tableau of suffering. "We need you forever." A deadly chill gripped my heart. I could feel the pull of the portal behind me, beckoning fervently with echoes of despair. But as I turned to escape, a brisk rush of wind roared down the hall, enveloping me in darkness, wrapping tighter than before. The shadows were alive, pulling taut around my limbs, dragging me back, Charlie. I screamed, reaching out, but the shadows closed in a suffocating veil that blotted out the feeble light. And then, as if a dam had broken, the laughter erupted, rising in a chilling crescendo as the corridor twisted and transformed, morphing into a cavern filled with chaos once more, the edges of my sanity fraying. "No. Please, don't take me back." I yelled, but the echoes swallowed my voice as the agonizing truth wrapped around me. Above the cacophony, a single chilling whisper pierced the air, wrapping itself around my consciousness, pulling tighter still until it echoed hauntingly in my mind. "It's your turn, Liam. We've been waiting for so long." With an eruption of veils peeling away and a profound silence collapsing in, I found myself teetering on the edge of existence, darkness and light blurring infinitely before me. No escape, only the darkness awaited. And before I could comprehend, the last threads of my reality unraveled, leaving behind a hollow, gnawing dread. "Liam, help me." And with that, the world spiraled into black, a deafening finality beneath the shadows. The void felt like an abyss opening beneath me. For an instant, I ceased to exist, engulfed by the silent screams of the forgotten souls. But then, as abruptly as it began, the blackness shattered. I was jolted back into a reality that pulsed with malevolence. The cabin stood around me, now warped and distorted as if the very architecture had twisted in response to some unseen terror. That I was alone, or so I thought. The air was thick, fraught with suffocating silence, punctured only by distant moans that twisted through the creaking wood. My senses were heightened, the hairs on the back of my neck rising as I felt eyes watching, waiting. "Charlie." I called hesitantly, my voice trembling, knowing it might manifest something far worse. There was no reply, only silence that stretched and twisted like a noose around my throat. That I stumbled back toward the door, but the corridor through which I had just emerged pulsed with a new kind of energy, a heartbeat synchronized with my own. I stood paralyzed, caught between the dread of returning to that cavern of despair and the unease that came from being out of its grasp. From the shadows, a low, throaty chuckle unfurled deep and dreadful, echoing through the walls of my mind. A figure materialized, shrouded in darkness, coalescing from the backs of the photographs lined against the walls. It wore the faces of my friends, but twisted, grotesque versions, their eyes glinting with sadistic delight. Did you think you could just leave? It spoke, its voice a chorus of the damned. We've waited for you to return, Liam. They need you to lead them. The air thickened, heavy with the scent of decay, as phantoms surged through the door, grotesque and monstrous. I recoiled, heart slamming against my ribs, yet they reached for me with skeletal hands, their whispers echoing in a torrent of chaos. Join us, they breathed with hungry longing. No. Get away from me. I screamed, shoving my hands forward, sending them reeling back momentarily. The shadows recoiled, but the force was insatiable, thrumming through the ground and vibrantly alive. Behind me, the door slammed shut, breaking my attempt at escape and amplifying the shrieks that now echoed in the hollow space. I was trapped, ensnared in this cabal of torment that played out before me a live tableau of those I had lost. The laughter grew louder, an orchestral cacophony of manic mirth, spiraling into a shrill pitch that clawed at my senses. I stumbled backward, my mind racing to find refuge from the horrors that dawned forth. Their forms twisted, morphing into the dark silhouettes of my loved ones, their eyes hollow, their voices splintered. You left us, Liam. They wailed, a chorus of accusation. You think you can forget us? You brought us here. Now, we're all in this together, please stop. I begged, choking back the tears that threatened to spill over my resolve. My legs trembled, my back pressed against the splintering wall, the only barrier between me and the chaos. Suddenly, a light flickered in the far end of the cabin, hazy and weak. It beckoned like a dim star against an infinite night. Could it be an exit, or another trap? My instincts screamed to investigate, yet horror rooted me to the spot, body poised between flight and fight. As I fought with my decision, the shadows began to swirl with a purpose, coiling tighter around my legs, threatening to anchor me permanently in this torment. They are coming for you, Liam. You can't hide from them. You belong to us. The pulsating dread pressed heavily, and for an instant, all I could comprehend was the pandemonium around me and within my own mind. I had taken so many steps into the dark and yet found only more darkness. In one desperate movement, I broke through the tightening grip, bolting toward the light. But as I moved, the floor beneath my feet shifted, and the last vestiges of the warped images flickered to life, revealing the faces of my friends panicked, pleading, their mouths moving silently in a desperate cry for help. I reached the amber glow, yearning for freedom, only to discover that it was nothing more than a reflection of my torment, a mirror, held by a disembodied hand emerging from the shadows, tracing the silhouette of my own face, sallow and twisted. You're not escaping, Liam, it murmured, ripping the mask away from that glowing light, revealing a gaping maw filled with darkness voraciously hungry. As I stared into the abyss reflected before me, reality twisted one last time. A hand shot through the mirror, clawing at my throat with a grip of ethereal ice. My scream was swallowed as the ground shifted abruptly beneath my feet, and the cabin convulsed, flinging me toward the yawning void. I fell into an echoing silence punctuated only by the hungry whispers that pursued me, filling the void around me. Join us, Liam, forever. And then I was spiraling, into the darkness, toward an unknown fate, as Charlie's voice echoed from the depths of despair, stronger than ever, help me. You can't leave me behind. The shadows burst forth, consuming all light, drowning me, pulling me deeper as a chorus of taunts echoed louder than my fading screams. And with that, I vanished into the black, leaving only a faint whisper of hope behind. The world coalesced around me with a grating, bone-chilling cacophony as I plunged into the oppressive depths of darkness. A vortex of despair twisted my existence, drawing me deeper into its cold embrace. I gasped for air, each breath tasting of ash and echoes, and the weight of unseen eyes bore down upon me, heavy and penetrating. Help me. You can't leave me behind. The agony in Charlie's voice resonated like mournful bells tolling. Each plea punctuated the swirling void, woven into the fabric of my mind, his urging transforming into a desperate wail that pressured me from every direction. Yet, what could I do? How could I save Heimer, even myself, in the clutches of this despairing tempest? The air shimmered, crackling like static, and I was suddenly ejected into a flickering dreamscape of phantasms flickering and fading around me like trembling candles fighting against a gushing wind. That I landed on uneven ground, my knees sinking into what felt like damp earth littered with fragments of memories and lost souls. Flickering lights circled me, ephemeral and enticing. I rose slowly, instincts firing as I surveyed the dismal surroundings. The forest loomed around me, a tangled web of skeletal trees clawing at the moonless sky. Each ancient trunk held scars, aberrant faces of faces marred with anguish peeked through the bark, their muted cries mingling with the chilling winds. Somewhere in the distance, a figure moved, shadowy and elongated, its limbs contorting like they belonged to something beyond this world. It paused, as if smelling the damp air, turning its hollow gaze toward me. My heart thudded, freezing me in place, the primal instinct to flee battling against the urge to understand. Liam, it sent forth, a voice long lost to torment. Charlie. I barely whispered as a tremor gripped my spine. But the silhouette recoiled, dissolving into the obscurity of the underbrush before my mind could catch up with the blurry notion of hope. I turned around, breath hitching as the forest itself began to pulse around me, the trees swaying in rhythmic patterns, and from their depths, whispers rose, conversations blending into indecipherable rants. You can't escape, you're not meant to be here, Charlie. I shouted, agony threading my words. The figure slipped back into view, lingering just on the edge of my vision, but when I followed its shadowed movement, it danced out of reach. The ground shifted beneath me, groaning like an awakening beast. Roots erupted, twisting and writhing like live serpents. Join us, they hissed, encircling my ankles, pulling me toward the earth with insidious determination. Panic gnawed at my resolve as I fought against the entangling roots, desperately clawing at the dirt, my fingernails tearing against the cold, unforgiving earth, and then, from the depths of this suffocating darkness, a sound like cracking glass sliced through the air. It exploded forth, fragments tearing apart the reality around. Meth Forest split into a myriad of distorted images. I glimpsed an oscillating momenta flicker of my cabin, its interior warped and twisted like it was feeding off the horror surrounding it. I screamed, wrenching against the grasping tendrils that sought to pull me down into their depths. The haunting laughter erupted once more, and the trees throbbed in response, a disorienting rhythm that seemed to speak the taunts of my own mind. You should have stayed, Liam. You too are one of us now. Shouting Charlie's name, I pushed forward, adrenaline ripping through my veins as I tore through the forest, branches scraping against my skin like skeletal hands hungry for the warmth of life. The shadows danced around me, angry and resentful, leaving behind trails of ice that crescendoed into agonizing, wrenching cries. With every frantic step, the presence behind me grew a weight, thick with malice. I felt its breath, fetid and ancient, brushing against my neck, and I dared not look back, fearing the malevolence wrapped around its form. Ahead, I saw a pulse of light and ethereal glow emanating from a clearing. My heart leapt, but even as I ran toward it, a gnawing dread settled heavily in my chest. Help me. Liam, please. Charlie's voice wailed again from the shadows, empty with despair. As I burst into the clearing, I stumbled upon a long-abandoned altar, its surface marred with the remnants of rituals long forgotten, encircled by leering trees entwined with roots that writhed like living nightmares. A central stone pulsed with an eerie, chilling light, beckoning me forward. At its core lay a grotesque shrine of rusted tools and bones, suffused with a sickly hue, and there, against the ghastly glow, I saw a solitary figure bound in chains of shimmering darkness, whose contours shifted unervingly, blending into the shadows around it. Liam, it echoed, a blend of pain and desperation. Charlie. I rushed forward, ready to free him, the chains vibrating with a potent energy, recounting the tales of those who had gone before. Panic surged within me as whispers crescendoed, drowning out reason, igniting a primal urge to save him. I reached for the chains, but before my fingers touched the cold metal, the altar began to shudder violently, dark tendrils rising around me like tentacles of doom. Foolish boy, you cannot save him. A voice boomed from nowhere and everywhere, echoing like thunder through the clearing. The ground beneath me erupted, and I felt the world tearing apart, my reality splintering like broken glass stretching toward infinity. The shadows surged forth, sweeping me up, pulling me away from the altar where Charlie's anguished cries melded into a cacophony of wails. Suddenly, the shadows revealed themselves, and I found myself no longer in the clearing but thrust backward into the cabin, standing once again within the hellish confines of my nightmares. With a horrible jolt of realization, I saw the reflections on the walls morph into something worse, visages of every person I had lost, twisted screams etched into their features, hands reaching out as if to drag me into their torment, and amidst them all, Charlie's form flickered, a haunting whisper spiraling through the air, chilling the marrow in my bones. You left me behind. You must choose now. The walls began to close in around me, the darkness breathing like a beast hungry for my regret. I was caught between two realms, me choice teetering on the edge of a void, where the price of failure would cost more than I could ever comprehend, and then, with the pull of inevitability, the mirror rippled back to life, reflecting my shame. I stared unabashed at my own visage, hollow, alone, and steeped in guilt, its cold expression beckoning me forward. The abyss called to me, a fierce temptation laced with the harrowing truth that echoed in the shadows. What would I sacrifice to save the one I loved? Would I join those writhing shadows, or would I succumb to the heart-wrenching chaos threading its way through my consciousness? In that moment, the ground beneath my feet shattered once more, and with a scream caught in my throat, I felt myself slipping away as reality fractured around me, pulling me deeper into the abyss of choices yet to be made, and then, everything went black. When I opened my eyes again, I was standing before that cursed altar, the weight of souls heavy in the air. The chains that bound Charlie were now shimmering like a mirage, suspended between dimensions. He looked different, his face twisted in a terror that cut deeper than anything I had seen before. Liam. His voice cracked, echoing through the desolate clearing, each syllable laced with a frantic plea. You have to let me go. You're the only one who can. But I hesitated, confusion swirling inside me like a storm. The shadows had given birth to my darkest fears, wrapping around my heart like vice grips. If I chose to unleash the horrors now, what would it mean? Would I merely become another prisoner? Please. He cried out, his eyes wide and glistening with despair. You're my only chance. There's so much at stake. In that litany of whispers, my memories flickered back, moments of joy, of love and laughter, all mixed with the dark regrets nestled thick in my chest. The guilt weighed down on me like a shroud, pushing me toward the realization of the true horror. It was never about saving him, it was about what I had already lost, the lives I had trampled upon, the souls condemned because of my actions. I shouted, the words ringing with newfound clarity. I can't be the one responsible again. I stepped back, searching the shadows for an escape, but they drew closer, ready to consume me whole. Suddenly, the ground quaked, shattering beneath me. The chains rattled violently, and Charlie's screams morphed into a cacophony of wailing, the tortured voices of every lost soul I had encountered. Save us! They cried. Save us! The chains pulsed with their desperation, and I felt the weight of their lives pushing against me, urging me forward, haunting me with the memories of their laughter now eclipsed by the shadows that enveloped this place. That I couldn't let them down again. Bile rose in my throat as I faced the altar, the glowing chains shimmering with the energy of the lost. They wanted me to join them. They wanted to expand their dominion into the living world through the guise of love. Liam, don't listen to them. Charlie's voice cut through the din, fierce and primal. If you do this, you'll be lost. You won't just condemn yourself but everyone you hold dear. His words struck like a blade, slicing through the enthralling darkness. It became clear, this wasn't about me saving him, it was about him saving me. My heart raced as dread coiled around my insides. Join us. The shadows beckoned, their voices now intertwining into a malicious song, a swell of intoxicating promises that froze my limbs. But then, through that tide of despair, the light flickered within me. The true horror was not the forest or the whispers, it was my own willingness to abandon those I cared for. I had already sacrificed so much, but what would one more be? Liam. Charlie's voice surged with desperation, filled with something more than just fear, now something that resembled hope. You are stronger than this. Choose to live. His gaze pierced through the facade of darkness. The choice crystallized before me, either to embrace the shadows and fall into the abyss, or to fight against them and reclaim every part of myself that had been wrenched away. Screams radiated from the altar, clawing at my resolution. I lunged forth and grasped the chains, trembling as I felt the soul's agony coursing through my veins. Instead of pulling them closer to the darkness, I would free them. I would finally lay them to rest. In that climactic moment, I shattered the chain, sending a surge of energy pinwheeling through the air. White-hot light erupting as if the very fabric of reality was tearing apart at the seams. And in that brilliant blaze, the silhouettes of every friend, every soul I had lost, began to emerge. I saw Charlie, full of life and laughter, as the memories surged forth around May's likeness, brilliant and clear against the storm. With a roar that echoed the years of suffering, I hurled the chains into the heart of the altar. The chains shattered into 1,000 pieces, scattering throughout the clearing with a piercing sound, each fragment igniting like stars in the chaos. A wave of light swept outwards, enveloping everyone. The shadows screamed, twisted, and roared as they were consumed by their own malevolence. I felt their heavy weight lift, their grief melting into something softer, something I could scarcely fathom. As the echoes of their cries faded into the night, I turned back to Charlie. He was floating before me, untethered by shadows, bathed in a soft glow that illuminated his face. That I knew you could do it. He laughed, that infectious energy erupting anew, washing over me like summer rain. His features were free now, unmarred by anguish, and for the first time in ages, I felt warmth seeping back into my being. But even as I basked in that triumphant light, I felt uncertainty tugging at the edges of my heart. What now? I whispered, my voice trembling with residual fear. Now, he said softly, we help others. We don't let them fall into the dark again. In that moment, I understood this was only the beginning. The remnants of the forest still lingered, remnants of despair ready to ensnare unwitting souls. As the last echoes of the tortured cries faded into the ether, I accepted that though the shadows had been vanquished here, darkness would forever linger just beyond the veil. And as we stepped away from the altar, determined to reclaim the living world, a whisper drifted on the soft night air, Liam, we never really leave. That last phrase simmered in the silence, coating my heart with an unsettling dread as the truth settled like lead in my chest, reminding me that even in victory, the darkness waits, lurking just beyond the light, always vengeful, always wanting.